Okay. All right, so before we call the caucus to order, Trey and Chandler are passing out colored cards. That is your presidential candidate. That's who you came to the caucus intending to support. Okay? So we're not using names in this case. We're using the colored cards for illustration, and we've designated your party for the purposes of how a plurality will work out. Okay, so if there's a majority, 50% plus one, they're pretty much in charge. They're going to determine what the slate is and so forth. So you win, you have 50% plus one of the qualified delegates in the hall. That's who's going to win. They're going to take all 12 of our delegates. If you don't get to 50% plus one, then it's going to be the plurality scenario that Chris talked about, and that's what we're going to be working through. So, juggling's not really a part of the caucus, so. Yes, yes, sir.
I've heard that the Democrat primary in Jackson County is on a separate day, March 23rd. So does that mean that you could vote in the caucus and vote in the primary?
Yes.
Well, I guess you could if you wanted to do that, if you had a change of heart between the two, but I wouldn't sign up for that Democrat caucus if you plan to attend the Republican caucus, because that might get out. Well, they say they're going to have a primary. Let's see what happens. Because they will be running that. It's a hybrid is what I understand, and it has to be funded. So I think that's a contingency of theirs. Since the government is not paying for that, they might have a problem getting their agenda done. Usually they ask us to pay for it, right? Compel us to pay for it through taxes. So, all right, so before I call this to order, I want to recognize that we do have members of the General Assembly here, Dan, Stacy, and Cindy Courtway. So thank you for coming. And Danny. All right, well, thank you all for coming. And thanks for getting that out of the House to the Senate. Do we have any senators in here? I don't think so. Okay. All right, so does everybody have a index card of a certain color? Hold that up. Chandler, if you would.
If you do not have a card, we raise your empty hand. Perfect.
Okay.
I will come and find you.
Anybody who does not have a card? Okay.
Everyone else has got a card?
All right. Hey, Chandler, this thing has got a screensaver on it that's too much. So, all right, as I said before, we're in the county of Newton, all right? Our purpose here today at the caucus would be to elect 12 delegates and 12 alternates. That's what the document of allocation shows. To the CD convention, and 12 delegates and 12 alternates to the state convention. So in real life, I'm the chairman of the county of Newton. So I'm going to call to order the caucus. I've done everything on our list. You know, I've named my credentials committee. I've posted where it's going to be. I've got a large room. So you would be in the Civic Center just off the square in Neosho, Missouri. But here we are. So I'm going to call the caucus to order. And I am serving as the temporary chair because I am the county chairman of Newton. And I have a temporary secretary who can read certain portions of the call to convention. how much of that we would do, I'm not sure. Can we get that to where it's maximum? So the next order of business, once we've called it to order, is the election of a permanent chair. So the fact I'm the county chair doesn't mean I get to run the whole caucus. In fact, the rules say we have to elect a permanent chair. So the temporary chair is going to conduct an election. So I am going to...
I nominate Chris Howard.
You consent to serve as chair?
I'll consent to serve as secretary. We'll let Nick be the chair.
So any other Okay. All right. Any other nominations? Now, so here's what you might want to do in this case. I'm not going to do it unless you demand it, is you might want to, if you're nominated, you may want to hand that off. If you know it's going to be a contested election, you may want to hand that off to somebody who could conduct the election between the two of you, or 3 or 4, whatever the nominations are. So
So you would appoint a temporary chair?
I would appoint. In fact, in this case, for illustration, I think I will appoint the person who declined as the temporary chair. So you want to conduct that?
Okay, we have one nomination for Nick Myers for permanent chair. Do we have any other nominations? Second's not required. That's in the rules. Any other nominations?
John Butler.
So we have John Butler. Do you consent to be nominated for chair of the caucus? He declines. Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations?
Mr. Chairman, I move that nominations cease and we elect Nick Myers by acclamation.
Okay, we have a nomination for nominations to cease and elect Nick Myers by acclamation. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed are out of order. Say no. No, I'm just kidding. Nick Myers, you are the permanent chair.
Okay. Thank you. So now we have the permanent chair. Okay. So I probably don't need to tell anybody in this room this, but you probably, if you intend to continue as the chair, you probably ought to see if you are in a position to continue as the chair, right before that. You should know whether you have the votes or not. I would recommend that. Because what we're really here to do is not build up anybody's ego, is we're here to elect delegates, talk about the platform, and all of this is moving towards winning in November. So remember that. All right, so next is the election of the caucus secretary, and this is a big job. There's lots of information we need to have. You need to have all the delegates and alternates in the proper order. You need to have the minutes, et cetera, the platform information. So the secretary is not just
Ceremonial.
yeah, not ceremonial or a beauty contest, although Chris would qualify for that.
Hey, I have a face and voice for radio.
All right, so nominations are in order for secretary.
I nominate Chris Howard for secretary.
All right, nomination of Chris Howard for secretary. Any other nominations?
I nominate Kathy Jo.
Okay, so Kathy Jo declines. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Hearing no other nominations, all in favor of Chris Howard being the permanent secretary, say aye. Aye. Okay, well, I would say the ayes would have that. I would.
Sure, you're fired.
The exclusion that proves the rule. So Chris is our permanent secretary. All right, so now it's time for nominations, all right? Well, we know who our nominees are going to be because by October, go ahead.
Sorry, I want to interject one thing. So at this point, the chair, and I recommend this, can appoint, it does not require an election, can appoint a parliamentarian, sergeant at arms, tellers, which I would have all those people kind of lined out in advance. Or if you're the temporary chair and you know, if he was the temporary chair and I took over as chair, he should say, hey, Chris, I got a parliamentarian for you. I got a sergeant at arms. I got tellers, so that you can go through that process. So those are appointed positions at the discretion of the chair, and this would be kind of at the point where you would make that known to the body. Sorry, go ahead.
Right. So So we're not prescribing who you appoint in addition. We just say if you need them, you appoint them. You want a sergeant at arms, you want a parliamentarian, it's probably a good idea to have a parliamentarian. Tellers, and for the purposes of this meeting, I'm going to appoint Chandler, Trey, and Miles as the tellers. So whenever we're looking at our votes and so forth, I'm going to have them gather those for us and work with you to determine who the folks are. Miles, would you come on up?
Well, he's coming up. I want to throw in one other thing. So when you look at the rules are kind of in a hierarchy of rules, so to speak. So the rules in the call are first. Robert's Rules of Order would be below that, not above that. So if you get someone who wants to play Captain Stickler, understand that the rules is printed in the call will supersede Robert's rules. And anything not addressed or contemplated in the rules then would fall to Robert's rules. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Nick.
Right, so Robert's rules are not primary in this case. The document you have in your hand is primary. But so now would be time for the nominations. These are the folks who've qualified, and I want Miles to tell you a little bit about how these folks got qualified and what kind of effort we put in.
Yes, good morning. Everybody that's up on the screen, they filled out a form, had it notarized, and got it to us along with the filing fee by October 31st. Some of them were like literally $4.59 on October 31st. But you know what? We're happy to have them all be a part of it. So, yeah.
Okay, great.
And
Thank
ladies and
you,
gentlemen, Miles deserves a huge round of applause. He spent hundreds of hours working with these candidates and the things that they did.
Thank you, Miles. So we have Donald Trump, Nikki Haley, Vivek Ramaswamy, Ron DeSantis, Chris Christie, Doug Burgum, Tim Scott, and David Stuckenberg have all qualified. So those are, at this point, these, and most likely, unless something drastic would change, these are going to be the 8 folks who are qualified candidates. Pardon me?
Yes.
That was part of the requirement, that it be collected funds. And yes, all of these folks have qualified.
They've qualified, but some have dropped out, or one has dropped out, so.
Who is that?
Hadn't Doug dropped out?
Who?
Didn't
No. No, he didn't make the debate stage. There's a difference. I mean, David Stuckenberg didn't make the debate stage either, but he qualified. So he's got all the rights in our caucuses that all the other 7 folks do. So those will be the nominees that are eligible at the caucus. And all the way through to the state convention, for that matter.
Nick, then one other question, and if any of them do drop out, how do we proceed with that problem?
Well, then, if they've dropped out, then I guess the interest, yeah, they just wouldn't be nominated. Oh, yes. Well, all right, so these would be the nominees. All right, so now we're down to the election of the delegates and alternates, and I'm going to ask Chris to interject here some, but we kind of know who's qualified and who hasn't. So you've got to be 15% plus of the folks in the room. So that's why it's real important you know what the number is of qualified voters when you call the convention to order, because you've got to be over 15% to be qualified to collect any delegates, okay? Now, we've designed this as a proportional outcome here today. I mean, of course, you're not going to have control of that, but we do here for example purposes. So if Donald Trump has 50% of the delegates plus 1, he's going to win all 12 of the delegates and alternates in the county of Newton. all right? But if he doesn't, or nobody does, then it's going to become proportional. And that's where the 15% rule comes in, and so forth. So, let me tell you, based on the cards you're holding, who the qualifying candidates are. So if you have a yellow card, hold that up. Is that our yellow color, guys? Okay. All right, so that your candidate is qualified. If you have an orange card, hold those up. Okay, so the orange candidate has qualified, is in excess of 15%. If you have a pink card, okay. Okay, so you're in excess of 15%. So if you have a blue card, okay, so. All right, so blue, you're not in excess of 15%, so your candidate is not going to make the cut. Green, all right. Okay, so we have two candidates who did not make 15%, all right? So what these blue and green need to do now is affiliate with another group. Chris, do you have something to say?
Yeah, so here, hold on, before y'all start doing it, so.
We're going to do a physical division here, but Chris.
So understand, so as you can see, this is the part where you actually can have fun. So, just so we're all clear, so when I kind of envisioned this in my head and I looked at what Iowa did, so Chris has his number one rule in life is I'm going to have fun. Which gives you two choices. You can have fun with me, or I can have fun at your expense, your choice. But seriously, so this is the part where the chair can either let it be a free-for-all, or the chair can say, okay, pink make your pitch, orange make your pitch, however. And then these people will have time to go and re-affiliate Caucus with one of the surviving groups, right? And you got 30 minutes to do that. And then, or you can just say, well, I'm not doing any of this, I'm mad, I'm going home, which I don't recommend, but you can do that. But now you get to re-affiliate. And then remember, once they've done that, now if you've cast a vote for one of the survivors, you don't get to move around now. You're committed. The only people who are moving around and re-affiliating are the people that were at 15% or less. Okay? So one scenario came up, well, can pink and green attack, the other group and get a, no, you can't do that. You've divided and you're going to stay divided. The only people moving in the room will be the people at 15% or less.
Okay, so let me say this. You would not know this when you were seated. There would be a division of the room, which I'm about to do, but before we do that, what questions?
So when you say that each different color is going to make their case for these groups that have less than 15%, what does that mean? What kind of?
So, excuse me, what I'm saying is,
Repeat the question, please.
so the question is, well, what does that mean to make their case, right? So let's say the pink team here is trying to lobby these guys to come join them. And they ask the chair to be recognized to make a speech trying to convince them. They could do that. Or the chair could just say, you got 30 minutes to figure it out, go. And let it be a free-for-all in a room, which is kind of what we're going to do here. But for the chairs, there's a couple ways you can approach this that is fair and whatever. I was just presenting options for you to contemplate.
Okay, so let me see the yellow cards again. All right, so I'm going to ask the yellow. Now this would be the candidate. So this, John Doe for president. All of the folks who support him, we know yellow's already made the cut, but imagine that you didn't know that. So I'm going to ask all the yellow candidates to go out into the lobby and congregate there and elect a leader.
Please be quiet, though, because it is a library.
Yeah. And now orange, where's orange? Okay, I'm going to ask orange to congregate in that back corner, back here. Pink, I'm going to ask you to congregate up here in this corner.
And remember, you have to elect a leader. That's your first order of business.
So elect a leader. That's your first case.
So hey guys, while you're in your group over here, of course you're supposed to elect a leader. But the other thing I would tell you is,
It's Dan. Yeah.
the other thing I would tell you is you need to start thinking about your slate situation, right? So you're going to find out how many you get, but you might want to start thinking you got to have name, address, phone number, email, all that kind of stuff. You got to have that. And so if you're, let's say I'm not here and I'm in your caucus, and Nola really likes me, so she's going to make sure that I get to be on as a delegate. And Jennifer's like, yeah, Chris is good enough. Mary's like, no, we don't want Chris. But you guys are going to start having those kind of conversations. Does that make sense? Is you want to try to do that. So while you're electing your leader, you want to start thinking about those other things you have to do.
You mean like tellers and when you say
Well,
slate?
no.
Okay.
Tellers. That's going to be decided by the chair. Your permanent chair is going to decide that. But you're thinking of slates.
delegates.
You got to create you have delegates and alternates for your team pink.
And how many
Well, you're going to find that out. Well, there's 12 total, but you're going to find how many you get based on the
our group?
right.
Yeah.
So something to consider too. So let's say hypothetically you're a candidate, you know you're supporting, but you know they may not survive to the state convention, right? So what you could say is, well, if there's one delegate up for grabs, that means there's also one alternate up for grabs. So what you do is you grab the delegate and give away the alternate.
Yeah, that's true.
See what I'm saying? So that's a negotiation tactic you can use. Say, well, if you give me the delegate, because I want that for the congressional convention, you can have the alternate, which will probably, you're going to end up getting that probably for the state convention. And then, you see what I'm saying? Nola's saying no.
I don't understand
So,
that,
so,
what you're
so
saying.
you have one delegate
Who
up
are
for
we
grabs.
negotiating with?
The other candidates, the other caucuses.
Oh, okay, I think we already recruited everybody of the less
No,
than 15%.
you're talking about when the leader goes to meet up front to decide that one
Oh, like for the
hanging,
person.
right.
Okay.
Right.
I'm with you now.
So instead of trying to take both delegate and the alternate, say, well, I'll tell you what, I'll take the delegate for the congressional district convention and you can have for the other, or I'll take the delegate and you take the alternate. So there's ways to work that, right? So there's a strategy to it.
Yeah, you bet.
So one thing I wanted to throw out real quick is, so when you go up, when your leader goes up front, right? And so there's probably one delegate and one alternate in question of who's going to get what. So let's say hypothetically you're like, well, I know my candidate is not likely to survive past the congressional district convention. So maybe you say to the other group, well, give me the delegate and I'll give you the alternate, right? Because the chances are, so, there's some negotiating there. Or you say, well, I'll tell you what, we'll split it. I'll take a delegate and alternate to the congressional district convention, and then you can have the one to the state convention, right? Because you can do that. So there's different strategies that you can use as your leader negotiates with the other leaders. But remember, they have 30 minutes to make a unanimous decision.
And can I throw another thing out there?
The 15% rule.
Yes.
So when people walk in the door, they already have to declare, I'm for Haley or I'm for DeSantis.
When
or I'm
the
for
chair
Trump.
calls for the vote, yeah.
But when they walk in
When
the
you
door.
walk to
Right.
determine the 15%, because we eliminated two groups.
Oh, I see what
Will
he's
there,
saying.
I think he's saying, like, will there be time
For a debate.
will there be place for undecided voters when they walk in?
Well, yeah.
Or do they pretty much have to know? Will there
Well,
be a
they don't
place
have
for
to
them
walk in.
to-
Well, no. So what's going to
Oh,
happen is that
before the
let's
first
say Chris Howard walks in and
Yeah.
he's just not convinced of what he's going to do, right?
Yeah.
And so Jennifer here is going to nominate Donald Trump, and she's going to give a 3-minute speech on how to
Oh,
do
there
that.
is some convincing.
There is some, right?
Okay.
And then let's say Nola says, "Well, I'm for Ron DeSantis," and she's going to give a 3 minutes. I'm just picking on people. This is just for hypothetical only,
Miss Nola,
right?
your face
And
knows.
so, let's say she says, "Well, I'm for Vivek Ramaswamy,"
Okay.
and she's going to have 3 minutes to make a speech, right? And then
So if
now,
nobody gets nominated, like, nobody nominates Chris Christie, you don't even have to vote.
right?
Right.
Yeah, someone's got to nominate him.
I was saying one that did.
So then you're gonna have.
But then-
you're gonna have a straw poll
Right.
early on.
Right. So the nominations are going to happen, and then the chair's going to say, "Well, here's our nominated candidates. So I want Trump, Vivaswamy, Haley, DeSantis," and now everyone's. So now you have to make. I have to make a decision. I have to decide where I want to go, and it's not until after that happens that we'll know whether we're going to have a winner take all scenario
That was your
or we have a
question, basically, right?
plurality
What
scenario.
happens if you
So we got 4.9 delegates there. Okay.
That's you guys.
We got 3.8
we're
there.
gonna round up, okay,
Yeah.
3.8.
And 0.269 times 12,
We need one more person, Dan.
3.2. Okay, so your pink is gonna have 4 delegates for sure.
Okay.
Orange is gonna have 3 delegates for sure. Yellow's gonna have 3 delegates for sure. Okay, so what is that? That's 10 delegates. 10 delegates, 10 alternates to each of the things. Okay, that means we got 2 fractional. So,
Probably should go to these two. 'cause
well,
they're almost
that's
there.
what you decide. Now, if you all can't decide how to allocate that, then the chair will decide. But you got a half hour to do that. We don't need to take a half hour. But, you know, you can do delegates, you can do alternates, you can do this convention, you can do that convention. You all work that out, and then,
So we're basically, just to understand, we've got two delegates that we're trying to figure out.
yeah, you got fractional.
Where we place them among us, yeah.
Okay.
You got 2 delegates to the state, you got 2 delegates to the CD, and you got 2 alternates to both of those. So you really got 8 positions to deal with, because you're going to come up with a slate. And so what I'm going to ask you to do, once you agree on that, tell me how you agree, and then I want you to go back and get the actual names that you're going to have on filling those positions, and then you'll bring those up, we'll read them off, we'll have the convention or the caucus vote on them, and that will be our slate.
So what happens, like in Clay County, where we have 5th and 6th congressional? So for like, when we're doing our county, they're gonna have 2 groups, or not until we come down. Usually 5th comes down to Jackson County, and 6th goes up to like Chillicothe or something.
Okay, so here's what's going to happen though. So for your local caucus, the first event, so it's a county caucus, and if you are broken up by congressional district, so let's say, so I know this in like St. Louis County. So CD2 exists in St. Charles County and St. Louis County, and both of those counties are going to divide up by congressional district. So they will still have, there will be St. Charles CD2 caucus and a St. Louis County CD2 caucus. There will not be one CD2 caucus.
And they are gonna choose however many.
Right. And then they'll have it allocated. Now, when you get to the congressional district convention, well, that's all of CD2, regardless of what county they touch.
That makes sense.
Does that make
'Cause
sense?
like here,
Because this is still a county caucus. You're just dividing up by the other divisions within your county line,
well, yeah, I don't know.
within your county boundary. Does that make sense?
No, I mean three different.
Yes?
We have 3 Jackson.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because
this is where I am.
Okay.
Oh, over here.
Emmanuel Cleaver.
Sure.
World.
Over.